Hi, everyone. Hey, welcome back to our book study. You are the happiness you seek. I love this book, and I know you do too. And we're on chapter 17 this week. Oh my God, we're coming to the end of the book. What are we going to do next? We could go back and read it again. I did others of his books a couple of times. We won't do it this year, though. It is my joy to be co hosting with Lisa Natoli this week.
Hi,
Everyone knows,
everyone. It's so good to see so many familiar faces. Oh my God.
right? Yeah, yeah, it's great. So good. And thank you, Jenny, for co hosting last week, or hosting and co host. Was Marlene last week? I think Jenny and Marlene. And I appreciate you stepping in for that. Lisa and I were in Dallas at a free family. My brothers and sisters, five of them live in Dallas, and we were all camping at a state park on the Texas-Oklahoma border. At a state park, we rent these campers, and we uh, have campfires and family talk. And some of it this weekend was political. It was a riot. Funny. Anyway, thank you all for being here this week. And we're looking at another awesome, this is a very relevant chapter. And I haven't talked to Lisa at all, even though she lives right down the hall. Her office
Uh,
is right down the
that's
hall.
funny.
We haven't talked about this
I
chapter.
don't, I don't live right down the hall. I actually live with Bill, but I'm currently down the hall in my office.
Let's get the correct context here.
Uh,
Funny. Anyway, tending to painful emotions is this chapter. And Lisa, I know that if you know Lisa, she goes, she reads a book every day. Every single day, she's reading a book, at least uh, some part of a book, and it's usually a different book. And did I see this one being read last night?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I read this one when it very first came out, like this. I actually pre-ordered the book way back when. And the thing I do with books, which isn't the best thing ever, but I get really excited, is I read it like it's Christmas morning and I'm like this excited 5-year-old and I just like read it just straight through. So I did that months ago. And then, of course, to get ready for today, I just came back. I've been following along every week, but last night I wanted to just jump back into chapter 17 and kind of get a sense of it again.
Well, it's another good one. It's a practical one, and it's simple, and yet it goes very deep to the heart
Mhm.
of suffering and not suffering. Attending to painful emotions. What do you want to look at first on this opening page, Lisa?
Yeah, well, to me, this is brilliant because it is practical. And I like that he gives us three ways. So the three ways that he says is the three different approaches is the way of avoidance, the way of inquiry, and the way of openness. And this first sentence, the impulse to avoid the dissatisfaction of our current experience can be followed in one of three directions. One, outwards towards an object, substance, activity, or relationship in an attempt to escape the discomfort of it. Two, inwards to the self on whose behalf the sense of lack arises. Or three, towards the feeling of lack or dissatisfaction itself. So, and then he's going to go on to describe like our default as the self-made image is distraction. The personal self-identity doesn't want to feel the discomfort typically, so it distracts itself and it doesn't see what it's doing, so it goes after an object, a situation, something, so that it doesn't actually see it. And then the two other ways And then he spends much of the next couple pages talking about either we can begin to question who is the I that's experiencing the discomforts. And that's the way of inquiry. And the way of openness is we go direct to the emotion and we welcome it. And so that's genius to me. I mean, that's very clear what he's inviting us to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's almost like there's two exit strategies. Or you stay or you perpetuate your suffering. There's two ideas that are exit strategies, or the relief of from suffering, and the having the experience of happiness. And in the second paragraph, we're on page 134 in the second paragraph, where I'm looking at the second option, the path of self-inquiry. He says is the equivalent of the break that the boxers take between rounds. I love that image of what he talked about there, because he brings it to life for us as as you've watched a boxing match, and he talks about going to the sidelines. Going to your corner is like moving away from the object of experience, and then moving back into your opponent. The way for release is to embrace, to grab a hold of your guy so he can't hit you anymore. The clinching within the boxing match. I thought that was pretty cool, to that example.
Yeah, I like that example too, because it's a good analogy. It's just like so often as the personal self-identity, and this is why I love Rupert so much, because he gets us to see that which has a story or has a difficulty or a pain or a problem is we don't even see it, that it's a self-made image. And so first, that's the first thing. And then he gives us these two very practical things that we can do, is either distance ourselves. So that's the boxing match thing, where we can distance ourselves from the problem, sensation, pain, whatever. And you're sort of in your corner away from it. So you're no longer engaged in sort of fighting with it. And then the second thing, which I love, is when he says, once the bell rings, your safety is in closeness. Like he says that he finds safety in closeness by wrapping your arms around the opponent, thus neutralizing him, so that we can begin to neutralize our uncomfortable emotions and sensations by actually embracing them. That's how we find safety and closeness.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that I the thing that I underlined here in that third paragraph that you just mentioned, the disentanglement from the content of experience and the return to the peace of our true nature. When in the next sentence, he says, in other words, in the way of inquiry or investigation, we turn away from the feeling and investigate the suffering self. Who is this I on whose behalf my suffering arises? And I put a little note there because there's a tendency to stop there and say, who is the I? Oh, it's the ego. I think this is an important place where you don't stop there. You don't stop with, oh, this is the separate self. No, you go back to that which sees the experience and stay there. Because you're not really interested in who's the I. You're interested in what is the experience that's being seen, and from where is it being seen. That's where I am. That's so it's a location inquiry that helps you to
Yeah.
locate.
Yeah. And I think that's an important distinction, and Rupert makes it because I think some people just think it's enough to stay as the witness and the observer. And Rupert's very clear, like that's just a temporary step. So, because otherwise you're just moving from the sufferer to, oh, I'm not the sufferer. I'm that which is aware of the suffering. I am,
You're
so
still in duality.
yeah, so you've create yes, exactly. So now you're doing this different thing. So from this distance, now you can say, okay, I'm not going to avoid the emotion. Now I embrace it and I welcome it and I bring it close and I, without a story and without trying to change anything, without any of that, it really does end the resistance. It ends the fight, it ends attack, and it also begins to dissolve that sensation. So yeah.
Yeah, but the embracing is actually the other strategy. The
Mhm.
embracing is the other, the openness strategy.
Mhm.
The negation is the strategy that sets apart the or it establishes the primary I, the primary self identity. I want to see. It looks like Rana. Oh, okay. Susan was looking for. Oh, she's. Thank you for putting that page number in Kindle, 183. And then Jackie said, "Is this the same as shining the light of awareness into the well, and the creatures come bubbling up in order to be released?" I would say that's what happens. Is this? What would you say on that?
Well, and Rupert says it on the next page also, and I think this is very important for anyone who's been on a spiritual path, is that even the idea of shining a light is something that the personal self identity does. And awareness is. It's not something we do. So on page 135 in the actual paper book, he says the openness is what we are, not what we do. So I mean that was my way, and it's not that it's wrong, but for decades I kept trying to be a light or shine a light or heal something or make something come up so it could be released. I was constantly doing forgiveness work, trying to, and then this approach is just to abide as the awareness without doing anything, without trying to shine a light on something. And in that, things either will or will not come up, but you're not trying to like see what's down there at the bottom of the well so it can
Well,
go.
Rupert uses that as a metaphor for what happens when we enter into this understanding. The deeper we go, or the more we abide, the more the things that are at the bottom of the well,
Mhm.
when the light is shining or the understanding is revealing itself in this openness, it tends to bubble up these seeming creatures that are at the bottom of the well. It's all just stories for or imagery for trying to describe what's occurring. It's not really shining a light on there. The light shines and the bubbling happens, and people want to know. Then the personal self wants to know what's happening, and he gives that scenario.
Yeah. And I love what he says here too, is and he uses the word courage a couple of times in this chapter, and I like that because he says some courage may initially be needed as we face the discomfort of the sense of lack from which we have been in flight for so much of our lives. However, by facing this sense of lack in this way, we will be withholding from it the one thing that is required for its survival, namely our resistance to it. And so I love this work so much, and I love the simplicity of the teaching. Is that it's not like we're magically or like hoping or wishing that something's just going to change for us. We're involved in the process. So he's saying like it has takes courage to actually stand present and still in the discomfort without going to our habitual distractions and allowing ourselves to face it and then embrace it. And um, yeah.
Yeah, I like. I mean, it really really does take courage when you're in the midst of this experience to not avoid it,
Hmm.
just to and to just sit with it. This is what happens when you're in an argument with someone. This is what happens when someone says something that you don't like, that you would prefer uh, they they see things differently. If you have if you're talking about politics, that's a perfect place for that those conflicts to show up, and it can be very uncomfortable to say nothing. Very uncomfortable, and it takes courage to sit there and say nothing in the midst of an urge to be right. What else would you look at on this page, Lisa?
Well, I love just on that same page 135, by welcoming what was previously unacceptable to us, we are, without necessarily realizing it at first, taking our stand as the presence of awareness. And it is only a matter of time before the peace and joy that is its very nature will begin to emerge and percolate into the foreground of experience. And then he summarizes, he summarizes these two approaches. So he kind of, he says there's three approaches. There's the way of avoidance, and he doesn't really talk much about that. He just is saying that is our default in the beginning. And then he focuses on the two approaches, which is the way of inquiry or investigation and the way of openness. So going from the first, I am lonely, and then creating the space, and then going into the loneliness itself. We
Yeah,
embrace the loneliness and ignore the I.
right, right, right. And the I mean, I like the in that fourth paragraph, the very last sentence in there, he says, "It is the way of surrender, of embrace,
Hmm.
the way of yes, the via positiva."
Yeah.
And this is why, we've been saying for years, when you said yes to this, when you said yes to this book study, you said yes to a deeper awakening experience. When you say yes to a conference, when you say yes to a teacher, a teaching, your yes is necessary for the intention or for the experience to reveal itself, to meet your desire. And the yes is the thing that opens doors, or the no is the thing that, and I guess the no could also be the thing that opens doors.
Yeah. Yeah, and I used to be someone, I'm a Westerner, like I'm an American girl. And for me, I always thought, oh, I don't want a teacher. I don't need a teacher. I'm going to get this by myself. And over the last few years, really looking at these non-duality teachers, Rupert Spira, Francis Lucille, Jean Klein, Ellen Emmett, like I've started to see, oh, they're where I wanted to be. And by really staying present, they could like save time for me. I realized that so deeply over the last couple of years. Is it is like having a guide into a land you want to go into. And we could all, yes, we could all get it by ourselves, but if there's a guide, and it's showing us like the pitfalls. Like, why not? Like, why not listen? And it's just there's these pointers. So I was like, oh, okay, oh, these are the ways. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of guides today. The internet is a wonderful tool for that. Or you can go to a physical teacher. You can go to uh, you can go to India. You can do any of those things, or you can just you can you can go to a book study that where the teacher's here, or you can. This weekend we have the conference, the End of Seeking conference. There's 25 or 6 speakers that are speaking of these things for awakening, and pick a speaker and or pick something you're interested in and immerse yourself in that. Rupert will be there Friday morning at the End of Seeking conference. I hope you're all registered for that. And also Gangaji will be there. She'll be there Friday evening. I think she's our last speaker. And she was a student of Papaji. She wasn't looking for a guru when she found Papaji, but it changed her life. And now she has changed many people's lives. So yeah, the teacher is an important part of. I think it's a shortcut, or a shortening of your path to understanding.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the comments. I like a couple that are posted here. Amy says conditioning is layered and is usually not transcended in one moment of awakening. And
Yep.
that was another aha for me, because I had the belief that, oh, we just wake up and then we're happy, and I couldn't understand why I was having these glimpses and then seemingly losing them. And once I understood that, what Amy you've just said, is like everything got easy, because I was like, oh, it's just like Rupert calls them residual, just residual of the separate self, but you're awake to it now. That's the difference. We're awake to now all those patterns and those conditioning. And then Andrew says, I guess the 3 approaches also applies to intense fear, not only sense of lack. Yeah. So Rupert really categorizes like lack as anything other than the recognition of our true self. So any emotion, any confusion, fear, anything, that's what lack is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we move to the title, Investigating the I.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a question that says, I understand this approach in theory, but can you give an example of what the way of investigation looks like in practice? And he gives some great, first, I mean, he takes them right to the hot seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Did everybody get a chance to read this chapter? I'd love to just see on the board, because that section that you're just entering into, Bill, is so genius. It's so, for anyone who's wants to be in the hot seat themselves, like,
Put
so.
yourself in the hot seat. Yeah, put
That
yourself
takes
there right now. Have the courage and put yourself in the hot seat.
Well, because he says, he goes straight into it. Tell us about the I that is upset. My image or the idea of myself. Usually I would feel like they shouldn't have done that. Can an image or an idea be upset? No. And then he goes into, like, I like the part where the person says, well, I guess it's like, he says, don't guess. Don't guess. We're
Yeah.
we're actually investigating, and no one knows yourself better than you. So this isn't a guessing game. We're gonna really just look at this and find out who this I is. And I guess it's a story. Don't guess. It's only necessary to guess about something you don't know. But you know yourself more intimately than you know any other thing. Your whole life revolves around I. Be specific. What is that? It's a story, yes, but can a story be upset? No. On whose behalf is the story being told? Who is the protagonizer of the story? Well, me. And then Rupert says, you point to your body when you say me, but is your body upset by these words? It feels upset. I get tightness in my stomach and chest. Is there anything to the tightness in your stomach or chest other than a mild sensation? So I think like these pages in this book, in this chapter, are brilliant for anyone who has anything going on to come here, to come to this chapter and to take the upsetting emotion or sensation or pain or whatever it is one is going through, and just take yourself through this process with that thing. You know, can a sensation be upset? No. Like you start to really see in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah. This has a little bit of the flavor of the work of like Byron Katie has a little bit of flavoring of her. Remember those sheets that we filled out?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, brilliant. And Susan is has a book club right now. That's the Thousand Faces of Joy. Is that
Oh
the
yeah,
name
I
of it?
love that book. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Thousand Names for Joy.
Thousand Names for Joy. Yeah, it's Byron Katie's book on that. This looks very much like her teaching right here. I'm just reminded of that.
And this
And
book, I don't know, Lynn, if you're asking about that one, but this is the Happiness. You Are the Happiness You Seek by Rupert Spira. I'm guessing you know that since this is this book study.
oh yeah, okay. I don't know if that's
Yeah, it could have been the Byron Katie book.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just took us off topic. I'm sorry. The thing that I was looking at on the question that when Rupert started his question with this person, he uses their own words to add for his self inquiry, and so you would use your own words in that process. He says, because the person says, my image or idea of myself, usually I would feel like, and so Rupert came right back and says, can an image or an idea be upset? He used exactly what he said to support the person in that experience.
Yeah.
And I thought that was important.
Because that's what I think is cool about this whole couple of pages. It's just what you said, Bill. Is I think if someone just came with their own situation and just went through the questions without reading the person's answer, let yourself answer it, and then go to the next question, and then like start to inquire for yourself exactly what Rupert is guiding us to. And and then of course you can read how he's working with this other person, but it's very fast.
Yeah, yeah. And we turn the page and we go to page one. Is there anything else on 137? You want to go to 138?
Nope, we can go to 138.
Okay. We continue with the self-inquiry, where Rupert is the subject is talking about their experience, and then he says, or she says to Rupert, I don't find a thing. He's investigating this experience. I find, I guess, just what I identify as me, what somehow I've been wronged, the experience. Okay, but who or what is that I that has been wronged? Is it not your body, a thought or an image that has been wronged? Nor is it awareness itself. So it's some sense of myself. What is that? I don't know what it is. And then Rupert goes back to say, it would be well to find out. So this is where we just pause and we look, and he says, unless and until you find a self other than the self of awareness, don't presume there is one. And above all, don't spend the rest of your life thinking, feeling, acting, and relating on its behalf.
That is genius.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
because we think the self is real. We just think, no, I really feel upset. I really am hurt. That person really did something to me, and now I have to do something. I don't like that. And we never question. We in our entire lifetime, we never suspect a thing. And along comes these teachings, and they're so the opposite of the way we've all been taught in the world as the self-made image, that at first these words can feel a little conceptual maybe, or like, what? But I think once someone has just the courage to just kind of keep an open mind, and that's what he says, the way of openness, and start to really look, okay, who is this I that is sick or hurt or angry or upset? And don't presume that there is an I until you actually can find it. And I love that. And
Well, these
above
are,
all,
in my mind, this is a lot of conversation and words that are pointing to something that happens in a moment.
yep.
In your own experience, this is something, there's not a dialogue. It all happens. You are the witness to all experience, and you get to be on both sides of the equation until you realize there's only one.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
There's a comment that and a statement from Jenny. She's talking about a teacher. Accepting a teacher just happens. At 1227, she wrote, it comes from an instant resonance and the resultant enthusiasm. But accepting a teacher doesn't mean believing what the teacher says. It's seeing whether the teacher is telling you something you already know. If not, just set it aside as a possibility. Don't adopt it as a belief. Hear, hear. So well said. Thank you, Jenny, for that. That's so perfect, because this is what I loved about Rupert when I met him. Don't believe me. What's your experience? This is why the direct path is not something that you believe. It's something that you see and know for yourself. That's what makes it so intimate and undeniable. It's like, oh yeah. And this is why everyone knows when they see as awareness, you're how can you say you're not awareness? How can you can't say you're not you? That'd be like saying, oh, I'm not really you, I'm not me. Well, who are you? What are you then if you're not me? It's so good. Where do you want to go on page 139? I put
Yeah.
a big smile face on 139. Let's see if
Well, I put a big smile face on
okay.
138.
Oh, good.
It says, when I look for myself, I find thoughts, feelings, and sensations, but I don't find an actual self or entity. And Rupert says, yes. And what is going to happen to your upset, your suffering, when you discover that the separate self on whose behalf it has arisen is not there? That gets a big smiley from me, because that's what he was speaking of just a couple pages ago. It's only our resistance to an identification with the story and the suffering that keeps it locked in. So what's going to happen to it if we see all this activity? And he says, this person, I assumed it would just go away. And Rupert says, yes, the upset or the suffering dissipates because there is no separate, independently existing entity or self present either to be upset or not to be upset. When it is seen clearly that there is no personal self, the issue of getting upset just doesn't arise.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's right below that is where I put here's my smiley. Let's see if you can see it.
Ah, that's cute.
Yeah, I put mine just in the silence when he says, now, what is it that gives you the undeniable sense of being yourself? Where does your basic sense of identity come from? Just from awareness. The person said, yes, tell us about that. Long silence. Tell us about this awareness. Long silence. It's so good. This is what Rupert, he brings you, or Francis, or, a teacher that brings you to that moment where there's nothing to say. That silence.
Yeah. And the other thing I really love about Rupert is also in that, like, then he says, I like your response, which was just silence. But then he also says, try to say something true about your self-awareness, even if it requires some concession to the limits of language. So, because I think what often happens for people on a spiritual path or people who are following Rupert Spira is then they try to get the answer right according to what they think Rupert wants. And Rupert doesn't want you to do it that way. Rupert or any teacher who abides as the self will say, well, just tell us in your own words what it is. Because then that can be worked with. But if you're trying to just give a right response that's accurate so that you can be the A student in the non-duality class, that's not going to help you. So Rupert says, okay, just try to tell us what it is, and you're going to have, even if it requires making some concessions.
Mm-hmm.
And then the person says, it just is. I just am. And I am aware. Yes, you awareness are present and aware. Anything else? And then another long silence. Can you be disturbed? No, I am always in peace. Do you lack anything? No, the question itself seems ridiculous. Yes, and what is the common name for the absence of lack? Does anybody know the answer to that question? Post it in the chat board. It's happiness.
Totally. Yeah, this is where the fruit is revealed. He went from someone that was questioning. He brought him through this whole experience of self-inquiry to where he was speaking directly to consciousness as consciousness, and consciousness was revealing itself in the answer. It's just a beautiful picture of a perfect precision inquiry.
And he says,
go ahead.
He says, happiness is your nature. You do not need to go anywhere or do anything to find it. It is always available within yourself as yourself. And then turning the page, your investigation into the nature of yourself has taken you from the happiness you seek to the happiness you are. This is self-inquiry in practice. And that's what the conference is this weekend. It's the end of seeking. It's the end of seeking conference, so that you're no longer seeking, you're recognizing what you are. That which you are seeking, I am. That's what my true nature is.
Yeah. That's what, the end of seeking, the theme is inspired for people that already know they're at that point, and now what? So the teachers are going to be speaking about that. There's going to be interviews. Jenny Beal has, I've asked her to interview Donald Hoffman, the scientist. You guys don't want to miss any of her sessions. Locke Kelly, she'll be the host for Locke Kelly and Francis. And because I was doing too many of the sessions, and I wanted someone, like Jenny is brilliant, and she did a beautiful job with Bernardo in the last conference, and I just thought she really would be a great experience for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Jenny, for
Love you, Jenny.
for being part of that. We love you.
She
and
is
we
brilliant.
appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. So that's coming up Friday, everyone, and we still have about 30 minutes left in our time together. Let's move to embracing our suffering.
Yeah. So now he's talking about the third approach. So he's talking about the first approach is the way of avoidance. The second approach is the way of inquiry. And the third approach is the way of openness, where we embrace that emotion, sensation, or suffering. And yeah, what I have in this section, I mean, this was the thing that totally changed my life. You offered this to me, Bill, through Rupert years ago, but welcoming that which I was trying to get rid of, that which I was trying to understand or figure out or improve or whatever, and starting to embrace it, welcome it, bring it close, not try to get rid of it anymore. Just say, okay, this is just what's arising. Why fight it? Why attack it? So he says in this second paragraph, it is the apparently separate self or ego that detaches itself from experience and views it from a distance. It is only from this apparent distance that we are able to feel and label our experience as fear, anxiety, shame, sorrow, and so on, and thus deem it unpleasant. All our suffering exists in the illusory space between the subject and the object of experience, just as the danger exists in the space between the two boxers when they are 1 meter apart. So he's emphasizing again, in the way of self-inquiry, we increase the distance, we move to our corners, we detach ourselves from the sensation or the emotion or the story. And in the way of openness, he says, we turn toward the experience from which we normally turn away. We welcome that which we would normally reject. We find sanctuary by embracing our suffering.
And that's the other piece of it. So that's why welcoming is such an important ingredient. Welcoming it's not it's a little different than accepting. At least it feels that way for me. It feels different than accepting or allowing. It feels like there's not another plan B. It's just you're loving this. Remember when I had that conversation with you? I was at a Rupert retreat in Garrison, and you had some thing going on, and I said, well, and I don't know, it just came in because Rupert had just finished giving a session on it. So I was just a channel for what he said earlier. And I said, can you just welcome it? Can you just welcome the experience? And then I took it one step deeper with you, and I said, no, I mean, like, love it. Like it's welcome for the rest of your life. It can stay right where it is from now on. And you actually paused a bit, at least for a few seconds before you answered that one.
Yeah, and that was life-changing for me. I had been dealing with physical symptoms and pain for 6 years, trying to get rid of it, did everything. I didn't know anything about the separate self back then, even though I'd been on a spiritual path all those years. And I love what you just said, Bill, because welcoming is so different from accepting. Because so acceptance might be, oh, I just accept that I'm sick. I'm just accept that I have pain. I just accept this is just the way it is. It's if you really just kind of pay attention, it really is different from welcoming. Because if you welcome someone, you fly the doors open, you've set out a feast for your friends to come, like welcome, come. I want you to come. Acceptance is more like, oh, so and so is coming to my house. I don't really want them to, but I accept this is just how it's going down. Welcoming is a totally different energy field. It really is like, I love, I think Patty just said it involves gratitude. It's like, it's not just I accept it, it's I welcome it. It's like, this is a friend. This is come on in. Hey, yes, stay a while, stay as long as you want, stay forever. You're welcome here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good example. Thank you for that. And it's subtle, but it's also it's quite different. And when we go to the next page, 141, the second paragraph, Rupert says, "In the way of openness, we understand and feel ourselves as the open, empty, resistance-less presence of awareness." Now let's just put that on. Just put that whole sentence on. That's you. That's I. That's I am you. In the way of openness, we understand and feel ourselves as open, empty, resistance-less presence of awareness. And we turn towards any afflictive emotion from which we would normally turn away. We allow the frog into the palace, albeit somewhat reluctantly. So even if it has a tinge of reluctance, you still allow it to occur, and it will take it will that's like an invitation to give awareness the key.
Well, I think that this is actually this practice of welcoming, in my experience, and when I've worked with many different people, it usually increases the discomfort because the separate self wants to hang on to, I can fix this. Other people have fixed this. I can change this situation. I can do something. So at first, it actually increases the resistance, and that's good too, because now you get to, if you're really staying present to all this mind activity, you'll see, oh, wow, like I have a real investment in my body identification and controlling situations so that they happen the way I want them to happen. And he says just a little bit further down, just what I was just expressing, he says, we do not simply tolerate or allow it, we positively welcome it. The frog is eating from our plate. And again, we may pause, allowing the habitual and familiar tendency to turn away from uncomfortable feelings, first to be exposed and then neutralized in our welcoming. Our resistance is diminishing, and with it, the afflictive quality of the emotion, the frog is sleeping on our pillow. And finally, we bring the feeling so close that we can no longer separate ourselves from it and label it fear, anxiety, shame, guilt, sorrow, and so on, let alone consider it unpleasant. The subject and the object, the feeler and the felt, the knower and the known have merged. And that's, I can't tell you how many people I have seen try to use this technique to still get rid of the feeling. It's like the separate self's last ditch, that I'm going to use welcoming to get rid of the pain. I'm going to use welcoming to heal this uncomfortable situation. That is not welcoming.
But how do you know that's happening?
Because you're still fighting. You're still there's just not, it's not welcoming. It's still like, I don't want this to be different. I don't
Right.
like this pain. I want it to go away. And now I'm,
Are you there? Where'd you go? Did we lose Lisa?
Yeah, she's just frozen up. Oh, there she's back. She's back.
Okay, where'd you go, Lisa?
you still can't see me?
No, I do now, but you froze.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea, and the reason I pose that question is because I've seen the emails that come in and say, "Well, I did what you said, and it's not working."
Right.
People are looking for the, okay, I did that. Why isn't there a change? Well, they're still not welcoming, right? If they're looking for something to change, it's a oxymoron. You
Mm.
can't have a caveat. Well, you have to be all in and fully. It's just what Patty said a little while ago. It's unconditional love. It's unconditional awareness that dissolves experience, but it's unconditional. There's no conditions available.
Yep. Terry Wade's in the house. Hey, Terry. She says, welcome it as it is, not needing it to change. Come as you are.
Yes.
And that's it. It's just, that can be very uncomfortable for many of us because we're used to thinking the body should be a certain way, life should be a certain way, people should be a certain way. That's consciousness doesn't do that. Awareness doesn't think these thoughts. Like, it's just to come to that realization of like, oh, I've been so identified with this self-made image. I didn't see, I didn't know.
Yeah. I like the very last paragraph and sentence. The frog has turned into a handsome prince.
Yes, exactly. So then yeah, and that's exactly was my experience. All that sickness became the greatest gift of that could have ever happened to me because it brought me to the point where I started to look at this more closely. I was like, oh, okay, all my seeking for the healing of a physical symptom has brought me to the place where the self became totally evident and happiness and peace and joy were the result. And so, yeah.
Well, before we'll turn the page to 142, but let's pause right there and look at this question that Anna Ray has at 1252, because I really think that you have this is a good question for you. It says, but Lisa, how can you in reality welcome physical pain? I mean, physical pain sensations, especially chronic ones, are automatically hard for the body to stand. The body resists them automatically. The symptoms, sympticus functions are activated and so on. I do not understand this. Even if you identify with consciousness, the body still reacts.
But that's where the body doesn't react. The body doesn't do anything. Can the nose do anything? Can the hand do anything? Can the foot do anything? No. Can a dead body do anything? No. Like, you need that life. There's something that's actually animating the body. So how can you in reality welcome physical pain? That was my choices were welcome it or fight it. I'd already been fighting it for 6 years. It didn't help me at all. So it was happening. Physical pain was occurring. And I tried for 6 years to make it go away or minimize it or change my diet. I did everything. And I came to a point because of Bill asking me if I could welcome it where it was like, oh, that's a totally different thing I've never done before or even considered. So it didn't get rid of the pain. It actually has gotten rid of the pain now, but it was that was like a byproduct, and I never tried to use welcoming to get rid of it. It's just what Bill said. It has to be done total. I welcome whatever the body does, whatever sensations arise. I stay as the awareness, and just it's like, okay, this is just what's happening. I'm not fighting it anymore. I'm not pushing it away. I'm not.
Well, and I mean, when you look at it for how its highest purpose it can be used, its highest purpose is your awakening experience becomes the prominent pull. Your awakening will overwhelm that experience if that becomes the pull of your heart. It takes it'll take first place, and then you would the thing that was causing the pain will take a second position.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to say what Jenny said, because this Jenny Beal, she says, Lynn Maria, this teaching can't get rid of physical pain. Rupert advises seeking medical help with pain relief if it's chronic. But seeing that you are not the pain, broadening your view can sometimes helps by relaxing the body. So that's always been my teaching also, because so many people hear my story and think, oh, I'm going to use this to get rid of pain. That's not what this is for. It really is like you should take, if the pain is so bad, take a pill. It's just
Go
not a
to the
problem.
doctor, and
Go
actually,
to the
someone else,
doctor. Yeah.
Lisa, said that she uses an app. So this isn't to negate or to make small those applications of support for a health issue. This is to really give focus to the higher purpose or the highest use of the experience can be your awakening experience, and it will be a signal if you make the pain or the sensation or the experience or the relationship issues or the grievance, whatever you call it, whatever it is, if you make it a signal that causes you to be the awareness of the experience and moving your attention there, pretty soon awareness will be your established, fixed identity for yourself, and you'll know this experience, whatever it is, as a passing cloud.
Yeah.
You'll know it as a whole different. It won't have the pull. It won't have the attention, or it won't have the trigger mechanism any longer, because you will be so established as your true nature.
Yeah. And Rupert says on page 143, he's talking about suffering. So, for me, all those years of sickness and pain and identifying with it, I was suffering. I don't like this happening. This shouldn't be happening. Why is this happening? I am sick. And when I started to just rest as awareness, and he talks about staying with the current experience. And then Rupert says, that is the great secret. People normally believe that their suffering takes place now, and that the relief from suffering is to be found in the future or past. However, our suffering begins the moment we try to escape from our current experience into an imagined future or a remembered past. If you want release from your suffering, that is, if you want peace or happiness, simply stay with your current experience. That's the key. And he says that is the great secret. And that was my experience. I stopped trying to change anything. I stayed with what was occurring. That was it. And it didn't mean that it was like all peace and joy. It was like, it was uncomfortable, but I stayed with the current experience. I didn't wish for it to be different. And in that, the self, happiness and peace and joy, when you're not resisting, start to shine through.
Yeah, and I mean, I like. I mean, this is a perfect chapter for you to be sharing as co-host, Lisa, because your experiences are so identical
I
or so
know.
similar to not only the subjects in the book, but also many on the board that are talking and having conversations about it at the same time. And as we go on, we're about 10 minutes, I think, 15 minutes left in this chapter. And if anyone has any questions, you want to put your hand up, feel free to do that. If you think that you have a question or a comment that you would like to add. Otherwise, we'll keep going. And on page 144, this person, this looks like a new questioner. She says, visualizing my ex making love with his partner, I think it's a her, is much worse than imagining a rotting corpse.
That's funny.
And he takes her through, well, he takes her through the process and then jumping down to, but I can't stop my thoughts about my past relationship. And Rupert says it is only possible to entertain one thought at a time. So he's bringing us to a reality check here instead of letting the mind run amok, letting it just, barrage us with excuses or reasons why you can't have this experience. He says the whole weight of your suffering is contained in a single thought. Cease investing that thought with the power to make you miserable. At any moment of suffering, just ask yourself the question without reference to thought or memory, where is my suffering? Bam, bam, right there. There it is.
Yeah.
All suffering is contained in the imaginary space between what I have and what I want. Make what you have what you want, and there will be no room for suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also just want to point out, I put it in huge big letters at the top of the page because I like that he said, because she's this person is having difficulty with her ex now in a new relationship, and Rupert says, but about being a student, one who has the courage, the love, and the clarity to go for the truth of their experience, irrespective of the cost to their personal life. And that has absolutely been my experience. And I don't know how it works for anybody else, but for me, I had to come to a place where knowing the truth was the most important thing.
Yeah.
I didn't care what the body did. I didn't care about having a better life anymore.
Yes.
I didn't care about my pride, or I didn't care about what people thought about me. I didn't care. It was not important to me. And then I had the courage, the love, and the clarity to go for the truth of my own experience. And that's needed.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not needed. Maybe it's not. But then a little bit later, she says, or he, there's a part of me that feels I need to be doing a little suffering. That's the conditioning.
Yeah.
And I have seen that so much that people are like, well, I like being in conflict. It's like, well, then what's the problem? You're getting what you want. Enjoy. Like if you feel you need to suffer a little, that's your happiness. And then he says, that's your freedom. But why do you feel you need to suffer? I think it's partly because I've created this story. I'm a woman. Okay, it is a woman whose relationship has ended. All my friends and family are in this with me, like, oh, you poor thing. This is really terrible. And he says, yes, the suffering is in the story, not the situation itself. Who is telling that story? I am telling it to myself. And then he says, yes, simply stop telling yourself that story. So it's not like a miracle is going to happen to us. Each one of us can come to a place where we can say, okay, I can stop telling that story. And then she says, it's kind of added to by the people around me. I think it's society as well that does this. And Rupert does not give any wiggle room ever. He
I
does
know.
not let you get away with it. He says, don't blame others for your suffering.
Right.
No person or situation imposes suffering on you. Your suffering is your own activity. All suffering is resistance, and all resistance is contained in the thought, I don't like what is present. I want what is not present. Have, and then he uses those same words again, the courage and the clarity to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Rosalind Rourke is dancing on the sidelines with your enthusiasm for what was just stated. So thank you for the way you expressed that. And Rosalind, thank you for your enthusiasm as a cheerleader also.
I don't see Rosalind.
Yeah, she's right there.
Oh, you see her on the screen. I was looking on the board.
No. She's on the screen.
Let me move to the gallery.
She's clapping and thumbs up. She's over there having a party. Yeah. So this is just a great example of a teacher that is saying, okay, stop it. Just stop that. Like Bob Newhart, just stop it. And you can say that to yourself,
Yeah.
you can be Bob Newhart. Stop it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes on. I like this next paragraph because this is so helpful for people to, sometimes you just have to be quiet about where you are on your spiritual walk. And because he says, choose carefully whom you speak to. And first, the person says, it feels quite hard. There's a justified part of me that wants to say, well, no, what he did was wrong and unkind. I hear what you're saying, but there's that going on as well. Even when I just talk to people, they're like, oh my God, that must be really awful. And, if you know you're going to be around people that are going to react for you in that way, probably a good idea not to tell them what's going on, because it's just going to support the symptom. It's going to support attention being on the false self-identity.
Yeah, and then he says, you are like someone in prison with the door wide open, just walk through it. And then she says, I think I'm just a professional sufferer. And then he goes, retire.
Retire, right? Yes.
And then she says, yes, I look forward to retiring. And Rupert says, don't look forward to it. Hand in your notice and leave. You are already free.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great.
But that's the thing. That's the personal self-identity that thinks later in the future we'll be free and that we'll retire from our suffering and that something's going to happen between now and then we'll be in happiness and joy. And I love that we have teachers like Rupert Spira who are just saying, no, do it now. Don't wait. Just the prison door is open. Walk through it. And it's that simple.
Yeah. He says, just after, choose carefully whom you speak to. Seek truth, not consolation. It is truth alone that will liberate you.
Mm.
Have the courage and the clarity to face your experience without turning away from it. The heavy burden of suffering that you have been carrying around with you, not just this last week, but all your life, is contained in a single thought. Can you taste the peace and freedom that is available to you if you don't refer to that single thought? I mean, freedom is available to all of us. And it doesn't mean that everything, that issues, relationships, things stop happening. It means it stops. You stop identifying as the subject of experience. You begin to have a relationship with that which never suffers, which is untouchable by experience, and it's always, and it's you. You get to be yourself and still be in a bodysuit with your experience, and somehow it gives us. We are learning how it works, but we don't really know how it works. It's like magic to be the self in this experience of our humanness, and yet we don't have to be these humans. We get to have our cake and eat it too, Lisa.
Well, I just want to spend the last few minutes celebrating Bill Free for putting this book study on. I know, right? Because he does this out of the pure love of his heart. It's always been totally free. I mean, every Wednesday. I want to just tell you, Bill, it's so beautiful for me to see Wednesday morning, because normally he's very active and he's doing a lot of different things. He always has a bunch of different balls going. Wednesday morning, he just sits in a chair and reads this book to get ready for this Wednesday. He just that's all he does, and then he comes here. So I really just want to say thank you, Bill. You're so awesome. And this weekend is the End of Seekિng Conference, which the Pure Presence team and the Teachers of God have spent literally months, 6 months or more planning. It's some of the clearest teachers on the planet. It's totally free if you show up live. It starts on Friday, goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I don't know if Susan, if you can post a link in the chat board, but yeah, it's really something. I don't know if anybody's been there before, but it's a pretty amazing out there conference. It's just been so put together with love, and it takes a village. I get to see behind the scenes, so sometimes I wish everybody could see it, but it's a lot of people behind the scenes making it look like it's nothing.
Yeah. And it's really for people to have an awakening experience. That's all it's for. Mm-hmm. And if you know anyone that you think would like to attend, share the link. It's so easy to give free stuff away, especially if you know the value of it. Right. So share it with your friends if you feel like it. These are really great teachers. Gangaji is a new one on my radar. I've been sharing YouTube videos with Lisa of Gangaji. She's amazing. She's going to be in our documentary. This documentary, we started filming it. We're gonna publish the documentary website, and it's a GoFundMe event. We're going to do that after the conference, and you'll start to see it. But we've begun filming it. We have some donation money that is coming in to help pay for it, but it's going to take another village to do the filming. We're going across the United States and
Europe and India and England.
Yeah. No, I don't think we have to go to India. Bio is actually coming here. We're going to film him in Montreal. All right. Well, we're going to say goodbye for today. Thank you all for being here and joining with us. We'll see you next week for chapter 18. Jenny will be our co-host again. Really appreciate your involvement in everything. She's always saying yes. Thank you, Jenny, for your yes.
Jenny.
And we'll see you guys at the conference. And then